This is the Detroit Pistons dancing usher. My name is Shannon. And when I'm not at the Palace, I'm listening to Detroit Sports Podcast. Log in, listen in, have some fun with us. Love this group. Love the station.
All I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
All day, every day.
Good morning, my neighbors!
That's why these two guys here, these are the men I want as my friends. They're the new blood.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast, the DocNJock Sports Program. I am the Doc, John Macaroon.
I'm a man of the people.
Joining me is my co-host, Adam the Jock Strozinski.
What the hell's going on here?
What's up, cuz? What's happening?
Have you seen these things at the top of like Google right now? It's like donate for Ebola. Have you seen this yet?
I get those in my Facebook page, and I just hit the X, and I'm like, why? Why am I getting that?
What the hell is this? Why? What's going on here? Like, really? If we donate $1, are we going to figure out a cure for Ebola? It's a virus, man. It's not going anywhere. It's been here since probably the Middle Ages. Get the hell out of here. What's going on, Google? What's going on, Facebook? Go away.
Do you donate to charity anywhere? You know, I noticed that a lot of athletes will have these great foundations. They'll do a lot of charitable work, or they'll, you know, be very conscientious to be good in the community and things like that. Now, we have to be honest, there is a great tax advantage to having a foundation, and that's a benefit for these athletes. But for you, do you donate to anything? The only thing I've donated to recently is from time to time, when you go to 7-Eleven, they'll ask you to donate the extra $1 for kids and things like that. So I've done that recently, but I just haven't been too conscientious to be a, contributor to these charities lately.
I donated to the right away, right after my grandmother had passed away. I had donated to the Jimmy V Foundation. That was probably the only thing I really ever donate to. I always feel awkward when I'm going through the line, like you said, at 7-Eleven, like, hey, will you donate $1 for kids? And I'm like, ooh, can those kids donate $1 to me? Like, I want another candy bar. What's going on here? So no, I usually don't donate to anybody or anything. I roll around with Linton buttons in my pocket, bro. Linton buttons. That's all I got.
Well, cuz after this weekend, Michigan State was exposed, and I don't think that we really gave enough credit to Ohio State for their ability to come in and really execute a game plan that was basically flawless. I mean, when Michigan State went out to Oregon and got walloped and didn't play well in the second half, it basically gave the blueprint on how to expose this defense. And a coach of the caliber of Urban Meyer used that film and developed a game plan that was absolutely flawless. And Michigan State's defense put on one of their worst performances of the season, and Michigan State now is out of the title picture. But I don't think that this season can be considered a failure. We're not going to be considered for the national playoff. I still think Michigan State can continue to build the program, but the realistic thing we have to think about is Michigan State really can't yet be considered a national elite program just yet. Right now, they're relevant in the Big Ten. They're building their program still. And if you remember a few podcasts back, you were like, yeah, sit there and puff out your chest. That's because there was so much talk of Michigan State being a national team that I just really didn't feel like with the drop-off that they had, that they replaced the players like a Darqueze Dennard, like a Max Bulla. They didn't replace them. They did not. The replacements obviously haven't done as well. And so Michigan State will be considered elite when great classes can graduate and you replace them with great talent like SEC teams. Urban Meyer has a young team, and as of now, Ohio State is the measuring stick in the Big Ten, and it's going to be a great challenge for Michigan State to try to reach his level.
Here's the thing. Michigan State fans, you have to realize this season is not a total loss. You still have a chance to be mitered in excellency and consistency, which is what you want as a program. If Michigan State goes out, wins their next 3 games, goes to a bowl game, and they win that, they finish up the season 11-2. All right. The worst part is you lost horribly to your two best opponents. You basically got manhandled both times. But this generally happens after you have a great season like they had last year. Last year they went to the Rose Bowl. They were sitting on top of the mountain, on top of the Big Ten mountain. They sat there and they stood. And everybody going into the season talked about how they should be in the playoff, So they had to run around the entire season with all that weight on top of their shoulders. Yeah, they got popped by Ohio State. Yeah, Ohio State's probably a better team. And yeah, Uncle Urban has Ohio State rolling and churning out victories. You realize he hasn't lost a Big Ten regular season game since he's come to the Big Ten, since he's taken over that Ohio State program?
21-0 is a great stat.
I mean, the guy is amazing right now. So yes, Ohio State is the measuring stick. But Michigan State, you've got a lot of great things ahead of you. And I think going forward, as long as they can sit there and they can dial in and they sit there and they pop Maryland this week, I think they'll be okay. And they sit there and get right back on that winning track and they just win out for the rest of the season. And you know what? You're mired in consistency. That's something that can't be said about the other school in this state.
And I think, too, with the great debate going on with who's the top 4 teams, who's going to get into the playoff, I think it'll behoove college football and the NCAA to possibly consider in the next couple of years expanding it to 8 teams. I think top 4 every year is going to be is really, really going to be hard. It's going to be considered like a Final Four. It's not something where you're going to be expected to get to the top 4 every single year. It's just too difficult. But I think if the NCAA expands it to 8 teams, then I think Michigan State has a reasonable goal that they can make the top 8 every couple years with a great defense and a good quarterback. Then you can see, I think Michigan State can reach the top 8 status. I just don't think right now with the talent pool being spread out so thin and the quality of the SEC that Michigan State can be a top 4 team so often. So if they expand it to top 8, that's a reasonable goal that can be attainable. Top 4, super tough. And with a coach like Urban Meyer, it's just going to be even tougher. And all credit to Ohio State. I mean, you didn't think that a quarterback like Barrett would come in and just dominate, run after run. And Michigan State after the second half didn't make the key adjustments. I mean, they really did not dent the Ohio State offense. And when you score 37 points, as Michigan State's offense did, you expect to win with that defense. And it just didn't happen. And Ohio State, all credit, they came in. I just think, though, Urban Meyer could have shown a little bit more class. I mean, the sight of him singing on Michigan State's field really irked me. I think that, obviously he has a lot of respect for Michigan State because we were their roadblock last season for him to get the national title game. And so this year he really, really dialed it up and put forth a significant amount of effort and game planning for this game, and it showed. But for Ohio State to be singing on the field and doing all that, get off the field, enjoy your win, celebrate with your team. Don't do that. More fuel to the fire for Michigan State, and hopefully when Michigan State plays them again, we can be a little bit more competitive. Because we have got a great podcast this week on episode 66. We're going to get a chance to talk to a friend of the podcast, Julian Rosen, to get his impressions on the Pistons' early start to the season. He attended the Pistons-Wizards game last night, and he'll give us his insight regarding the game, and hopefully...
Mr. Fantasy Insider himself, huh?
One of our fantasy insiders. If you read our blog page, he's the writer for our fantasy studs and duds, and he brings a lot of information, a lot of insight, and we always look forward to our chats with him. Cuz, you ready to kick this bad boy off?
Dude, I've been waiting all week for this. Let's get into it.
All right, cuz. The Lions, after the bye week, they came out and played a decent game versus the Dolphins. Unfortunately, the offense still is having a little bit difficulty getting in gear for a full 60 minutes, but all that matters, at the end of the game, we got the W. Miami did not present the challenge that we thought they would, and we were able to get the victory. 3 straight late comeback wins, and Matthew Stafford's starting to show. When it's crunch time, when it's money time, he's on. And great performance. And as you've seen, early on in that game, he targeted Calvin a little bit too much. He did connect with Calvin for that 49-yard touchdown, and Calvin is a threat each and every play. But in the second half, he started targeting Golden Tate, and you started to notice once Golden Tate got rolling and got more touches, because Megatron was targeted around 15 times, but he did not have that many completions. I think he caught 7 balls out of 15. Golden Tate was targeted 15 times. I think he got between 12 and 13 catches. So his efficiency is very noticeable. Target Golden Tate a little bit more to start the game, And the thing that most people are talking about is if the Lions can play a little bit more up-tempo more often in the early start to the games, I mean, mix it up. You cannot realistically run a 2-minute offense every possession. But every now and then, get to the line and run a play faster.
I like to see them go no huddle the first 10 or 12 plays of the game. Just go no huddle.
It's obvious that Matthew Stafford has command of the 2-minute drill. He has the ability to make quick reads and is making great passes. I mean, the offense is basically flawless in the 2-minute drill. And the defense gave the Lions a chance to come back in the game by getting the ball back that second time because the Lions had gone 3 and out. The ball went back to Miami, and they were not able to successfully get a first down. And we got the ball back. Boom. Theo Riddick, touchdown. Theo Riddick package wins us the game.
Dude, what kind of crazy pass was that from Matt Stafford? That seriously, he looked like he was like he was a baseball player, like throwing sidearm, throwing a submariner out there. That was crazy. The way he kind of stepped into it and the way he kind of basically flung it off the side of his hip, that was unbelievable. It was a great throw, great catch. The whole play was pretty outstanding.
Did any part of you worry that we were not going to come back this game? Because it's very difficult for teams to come back week after week. Were you nervous at all that we weren't going to pull this one out?
Funny story. I was sitting there and I was watching the game next to an older lady, and she started basically yelling at the TV. She was like, "We're gonna lose this. We're gonna lose." She's like, "It's so bad the way these Lions play. It's so bad." I'm like, "Look, there's 4 minutes left. It's gonna be okay. Plenty of time. Don't worry about it." They sat there. They ended up turning the ball back over on downs. They ended up getting the ball back with a minimal amount of time, march right down the field, and they score. And I was like, "What'd I tell you? What'd I tell you?" I was like, no, at no point, I had complete faith. I had complete faith, which is so weird. It's so weird wearing this shoe right now. Because generally you're like, they're just going to blow it. They're going to blow it. There's going to be some kind of really bad turnover. There's going to be something that's catastrophic is going to happen. And it's just not happening this year. That defense holds tough, makes stops when they need them, and they get the ball back for that offense. And like you said, Matt Stafford goes right down the field. He has complete command over this 2-minute offense, and he puts points on the board, or he gets this team in position to put points on the board. It's so weird. I feel like we're living in the Twilight Zone right now.
No, we're not living in the Twilight Zone. The Lions have had success in the past. There were seasons past where we had success, but it was always followed with an epic collapse. I just think that Jim Caldwell's even-keel attitude, his prolific experience with other football clubs, has allowed the Lions to kind of relax. A lot of the players are starting to talk that, hey, I really feel like I'm being treated like a professional. I'm being treated much differently than in the past. They're not getting barked at, which I think they needed in the past. You can't look at things in a vacuum. You have to kind of really understand where the Lions came from was 0-16. You needed that coach to get on their ass, to bark, to chew their asses out. Now, you broom that guy aside. Now you get an even keel guy, a guy who keeps their legs fresh, and you change it up. And now this team is responding by having that little extra in the fourth quarter. They're not as tired. He's treating the players with respect, and they're playing all out for him. And so I just think that Jim Schwartz is not a bum. He deserves a little bit more respect. Yes, he had some faults in terms of his ability to relate to the players, but there's a coach out there who chews out his players, and his name is Bill Belichick, and he's not afraid to say whatever he needs to. The only difference was Schwartz didn't have that success to warrant his bravado. And so he was broomed aside. Jim Caldwell's in, and his voice now is a breath of fresh air, and he's keeping an even keel, and the Lions are playing a winning brand of football. Now, the level of competition hasn't been as great in terms of the schedule. You got Miami, you played Minnesota, you played a team like Atlanta who hasn't been playing great. So, upcoming, cuz now in the early part of the season, you had your midterms. Now you're going to get to your final exams when you play Arizona on the road, 8-1, follow that up by playing at New England. So now you're going to get a chance to show what you're about. Because if you go out to Arizona and New England and get, raked over the coals Bear style, then it's going to take a little bit of luster off. But if you can win one of those two games, or you can be in it till the end, then that will show the fans that, hey, this team could do the unthinkable. Win their second playoff game in our history. 2 playoff wins, because we've been sitting on 1 playoff win for over 50 years for so long. This team might have the chance to host a playoff game and win. Let's not jinx it. I'm not fully ready to say that we can win a playoff game, but I think we can compete. And if we can get a chance to play a team like the Saints or Dallas at our house, then I think we have a chance to celebrate. But I just want us to keep consistent and to not get so overboard that we lose perspective in that we aren't playing the best competition to get to this 7-2 record, but we are playing good enough, and you can only play the teams that are in front of you. 7 wins out of 9 ain't bad. It's all good.
You know what? I'm gonna do you one better. This team has the possibility to get a first round bye and then sit there and host a playoff game, which is amazing if they can do that. But here's the thing. This team can only play who's in front of them and who's laid out in front of them. And they have played some winning teams. If you go and you look at who they've beaten up on, they have beaten winning teams. They've beaten a Green Bay team who has a winning record. They've beaten a Buffalo team who has a winning record. They've beaten a Miami Dolphin team who has a winning record. They've beaten the Saints now, they don't have a winning record, but they were a 500 team going into last week. So they have beaten some solid teams. The thing is, I don't know if they can continue to win games playing this way. That's the big question mark. You can't sit there and you can't rely on winning a game with a minute 13 left and throwing a touchdown or getting a position to kick a field goal. You can't win every game that way. They're going to have to sit there and that offense is going to have to figure it out, and they're going to have to start putting some points on the board because this is... I know it causes me to basically have a heart attack every week, but besides my health, I don't think this team can go on the rest of the season doing this. I don't know if it's good to go on the rest of the season to do this because at a certain point, you're going to lose games that you should win. You know, they should have won that Buffalo game, but they're going to go on and they're going to lose these games that they should actually win because they're not taking care of business early on. They're sitting there and they're waiting to the very last second. And that defense has to then come up with a big stop to get that offense the ball back so that offense can go march down the field and score. So I don't think they can continue to win games like this. That's the big question mark. Is can they put it all together within the first 3 quarters, maybe the first 4 quarters, part of that beginning half of that 4th quarter. So you don't have to sit there and worry about the 2-minute drill.
A point of contention that I think we need to point out and we need to explore is this team is one-dimensional on offense. They're a passing team. They've been efficient because they have talent. But in the playoffs, teams can stop your offense because when you get to the playoffs, the level of competition goes up. You need to be able to establish the run to keep drives going. And if Reggie Bush and Joik Bell don't step it up a little bit more, because I believe between 60 and 70 yards total for rushing for the Lions versus Miami. Now, yes, Miami has a big defense.
Do you realize they've only had 3 games where they've gone over 50 yards rushing the entire season? Only 3 games.
That's terrible.
That is horrible. They're 31st in the league in rushing right now.
And you come off of a bye week, and a lot of the players on offense get hurt. Warford, Waddle, Reggie Bush was in and out of the lineup that game. And I just think that the offense as a whole needs to develop a lot faster. And if Reggie Bush doesn't step it up, I was really surprised. A reporter from New Orleans tweeted us, and because I was kind of tweeting out that, kind of feel like Reggie Bush is stealing. It's kind of like he's not giving out, I don't know, I don't want to question his effort, but he's not a gamer in my opinion. He's not a guy that if you're in the trenches, he's going to be there. He gets a little nick, he's out of the game. And he replied, he's like, yeah, he's always hurt. And so that's why I think that I'm longing after watching that debacle of a Monday night game. What would our offense look like if we had Darren Sproles? Good Lord. If we had
so different.
It'd be great if we had a guy like Darren Sproles out of the backfield. He would complement Matthew Stafford. He's got big play capabilities. And he came from New Orleans. I just wish that, the guy that we took, Reggie Bush, could step it up. It's not to knock him. He's got all the potential. He's just not showing. He's not living up to $4 million a year. He's not living up to the contract. And you got a guy like Darren Sproles who's undersized, but he's a little ball of hate. He's got a lot of energy, a lot of passion, and dude finds the end zone. He is a great player and one that I wish was on the Lions. But if he's not going to be here, Reggie Bush and the running game has to step it up, and the offensive line has to protect Stafford because he took a crunch, a couple hits in that Miami game. And if you think Miami was tough, Arizona's going to bring the noise. We don't want to get any injuries. Just look what happened to Carson Palmer. We don't want Matthew Stafford getting dinged to ruin our season.
I don't think we can afford any more injuries. This team's been nicked up all season.
Now, cuz, a player's play that stood out in the game versus Miami isn't Ndamukong Suh. He was dominant. He put on a performance that we've been wanting to see. Now, the issue is he doesn't do it week in and week out, and that's possibly due to being double covered, but he does open things up for Ansah. He opened things up for Fairley before the injury, and he played a great game, and he was a dominant force. A lot of talk has been coming, a lot of whispers has been, hey, is he worth $16 million a year? He's not going to get 16.8 J.J. Watt money.
He shouldn't get J.J. Watt money.
But he's going to be in the neighborhood of $100 million. You're a player like Matthew Stafford, Calvin, they sit you down. They're like, yo, Matt, we want to keep Suh. You take a little bit less money and restructure your deal. You do it to keep Sue? Because unfortunately, you can't keep Sue, and you can't keep Calvin, you can't keep Stafford all making that money. One of those guys is going to have to take a cut. You think they do it? And if they walked you into that office, would you take less money in any situation to keep a player to help your team get better?
With the dominant force that he's become on this defense, I think you have to. If you're a player who wants to win in this league, we've talked about it time and time again, it comes from the defense. This defense is the only reason this team is 7-2 right now, because this offense is puttering the entire first half of the season. So I think you have to. If you're Matt Stafford, if you're Calvin Johnson, you have to come to the table and you have to be willing to take less. You've got to sit there and you've got to give a little bit back to sit there and help sign this guy. I've been probably one of the biggest proponents of Sue. I don't want him here. I don't like his personality, but he is a game changer. He totally changes the complexion of this defense. Nick Fairley went out and everybody was nervous. How is this defense going to react? What's going to happen? Because Nick Fairley was a large piece right there in the middle of that defense. Nick Fairley went out and Ndamukong Suh all of a sudden stepped up. He put his Superman cape on and he's like, I got this. Don't worry about it. I'm going to clog up the middle. I'm going to be a man amongst boys and I'm going to go get this quarterback. And he's done that time and time again this season. So I don't know if he's playing for the contract or if he has this potential in him at all times and he just kind of lets it lie dormant. But if he is going to come to the table and he's going to play this way every single game, I'm Matt Stafford, I'm Calvin Johnson, I'm any other guy making a ton of money on this roster, I'm coming to the table to give a little bit back so he can get his piece of the pie too. Because you need him on this defense. He is the guy who stirs the drink right now on this defense. Because that front line is so dominant and it's led by him, those linebackers in that secondary look that much better. And he is the main reason that we have the number one defense right now. He's sitting there taking on double teams so Ziggy Ansah can get to the quarterback. So other guys can come off the edge and sit there, get to the quarterback, or stuff the run. And he's sitting there blowing up the middle and just basically manhandling guys, two guys in front of him, and getting arms on quarterbacks and throwing them to the ground like they were children. So I think you have to do that.
Here's the tough part of this decision. A defensive tackle making $16 million is a lot.
Ridiculous
It's
money.
a chunk of money, and it may hinder your ability to get other players down the line. Now, if he was an end, like a J.J. Watt, who is a little bit more versatile, who can do a lot more different things, okay, he could be in that $16.8 million range. But J.J. Watt is a playmaker. He's scoring touchdowns.
J.J. Watt's unbelievable.
J.J. Watt is in a whole different level than Sue. But Sue has value. But does he have $16 million value? I say no. I say that you don't risk alienating your star players by keeping them here. Because while they may publicly say the right things, it is insulting. It is something that players don't like when they're called in a room to say, hey, we've negotiated a deal and now you want me to take less money? It takes a rare, special person to want to take less. Tom Brady's one of them. He's done it. He's undervalued. Notably, been undervalued on some of his contracts, and he's notorious for going in and changing his deal, taking less money for the players. But look how they've treated him. Does he still have a wide receiver? He's basically making New England. I would be pissed. There's no guarantee that if you take your money, that they're going to use it for the right player.
When your best wide receiver is Julian Edelman,
I'd be pissed.
What was he? He was a defensive back and special teams player. When he's your best wide receiver, there's an issue.
Tom Brady is a legend, and he's making players better, and that's why it's tough for Stafford to be compared to him, because he's been surrounded by a lot of talent. And Tom Brady has been notorious for being selfless and giving money, but they haven't returned the favor. And so I don't know if it's worth it to do it for Sue. I'm not saying he's replaceable, but you can get a guy in there for a little bit less money and sprinkle the money around to further help that number one defense. So it's going to be a tough decision, and a lot of people are saying, hey, this guy Sue is playing, he's playing for his contract. But once he gets it, does he produce this level? Does he want to be a marquee guy? Does he want to be here in Detroit? I just think that he's doing the professional thing and he's doing the right thing for himself and his value. But my heart of hearts, I don't think he'll be back next year. And I'm not going to be mad at him. I just think that he's going to get a massive amount of money. He's looking to be one of the top two highest paid defensive players. I just don't think the Lions can afford to do that and maintain a level of competitiveness that we want.
Can I tell you something that I've kind of heard floated around about these Lions and why Ndamukong Suh probably won't be back here next year? There's a good possibility that they're going to be switching to a 3-4. So you've got a guy on the outside like Ziggy Ansah. You're going to have to go out there and get a nose tackle now. The reason why you drafted Van Noy was to have that depth at linebacker. So now you have to go out next year in the draft, get another linebacker, go find a nose tackle, and basically clog up that middle with some guy who's about 350. So you let Ndamukong Suh roll out, and now you've got some money that you can sprinkle it around on this defense to make it better, and you're going to sit there and you're going to basically reinvent the wheel here with this defense probably next season.
So, cuz, we watched the Lions, we're all excited, and then the Green Bay Packers take the stage, and at home versus the Bears, and Jay Cutler, and Alshon Jeffrey, and Brandon Marshall, arguably a decent offensive unit, and arguably a decent defense, although they've been struggling getting shellacked by New England. They laid down. The Bears laid down, and Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay put on a performance. Six touchdowns. 6. Why can't I be a beneficiary of a player on my team that has 6 touchdowns? You know? Wow. Aaron Rodgers, 50 fantasy points in the first half. Not even needed in the second half. And everyone's like, damn, how did the Lions contain Aaron Rodgers? Well, combination of a couple things. We played a great game at home, and we limited him. We pressured him, and we only limited him to 7 points. He didn't play a great game. But now it's going to be a different story. And if you look at the schedule, the Lions play Green Bay, the final game of the season, in Lambeau Field. It's going to be cold, and it could have some serious divisional implications.
Depending on the health of this team, I think it's going to come down to that game. I really do think it is.
It's going to be probably on national television, flexed into the NBC night game.
Mm-hmm.
Any fear looking at Green Bay going forward, if that game is for the division, are you confident sitting here now in week 11 of the season?
Actually, I'm scared shitless of Green Bay. The way they're rolling right now, you have to be scared of Green Bay. No sane person is realistically looking at the schedule being like, oh, it's Green Bay in Lambeau. Chalk that up as a W. There is no way in hell. You can't. I think right now, Detroit needs to try to grip this lead that they have. It's a very slim one, but they got to grip it by the throat. And they basically have to take it into that December 28th game. And they've got to sit there and they've got to play probably one of their best games of the season. They have to remain healthy, though. I think a lot hinges on them being healthy.
Yeah, you have to kind of hope you split Arizona and New England, and you got to crush Tampa Bay and Chicago twice.
You got to beat Chicago twice.
You got to beat them twice.
You really do.
They're reeling. They have almost basically quit on their coach.
Yep.
Do they turn it around? No. But can they play a decent game? Yeah. They have
all the pieces to sit there and run the score up by 56 points. But they just can't put it together week in and week out. And Jay Cutler, he always has gas face.
What the hell is that about?
You know, he always looks like he's got to go in the bathroom and take a deuce. You know, he always looks frustrated. I don't know, man. Maybe he needs to sit there and play around on his insulin pump or something. But seriously, Cutler's a mess right now. They got Matt Forte, Alshon Jeffrey. They've got Brandon Marshall. I mean, they've got talent. Even on the defensive side of the ball, they have talent. You got a guy like Lance Briggs, Jared Allen.
If you're a Michigan fan, you got to be a little bit worried about Chicago because there's a coach out there in San Francisco that if he gets let go, looks like a perfect fit for the Bears. Smash mouth, he looks like a Bear head coach. He could take Cutler and reshape him and get his confidence back. He could use those offensive weapons. He could build the defense.
Chicago, man.
Used to play for Chicago. He used to play
underneath the guy that all Chicago fans worship, Ditka. So
you got to be worried. I don't think now that, in my honest opinion, if I'm a betting man, I would say Harbaugh ends up there. If he looks around, that's the best chance because basically he knows that in the North is much different than the NFC West. The North Division, if you just upgrade the talent on defense, you're right there. You're in the thick of things. Because in the West, oh my God, Seattle, St. Louis is going to be up and coming. Every game, week in, week out, is a nightmare. And that's why you've seen San Francisco take a dip back with injuries, because that division is monstrous. So I'd be worried if I was a Michigan fan. It's not stamped that Harbaugh comes here. And the Lions need to handle their business upcoming in the next few games in order for us to win. And so with that, they need to really ramp up the offense and help the defense out a little bit, because the defense has been carrying them. So I just want to ask you this. Do you think in the upcoming weeks or for the rest of the season that the Lions put up a 30 spot in any of the remaining games? 30 points. I mean, because we thought this vaunted offense was going to carry this team, and they're barely cracking 25 every week. It's a grind. And it'd be nice to get a 56-point blowout. It'd be nice to hurt. Look what Philadelphia did with Mark Sanchez. Mark Sanchez went in, handled his business at home versus Carolina, and he's resurrected his career. I mean, he's always going to be thought of as the butt fumble quarterback, but he's done a great job in the absence of Foles. And it'd be nice if the Lions could, hey, go out to Arizona, lay a hammer on them. Let's have a relaxing game. You think it happens?
The one game that I see where they can sit there and put up more than a 30 spot is probably that Tampa game. I think the Bears, that's going to be a slobber knocker, especially coming off a short week. The Vikings have played the Lions tough, and the Vikings always play the Lions tough. So I think that Tampa Bay is the most realistic chance for them to put up 30, and that is probably the only game going forward that they put up 30.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they do. I think that the Lions are right now still trying to find their offensive identity, and it's just taking a little bit longer time. But it's great to see that Golden Tate is a great compliment to Calvin Johnson, and he should be targeted more, and he should get a chance to shine because he's a really talented player and really a guy that has helped this offense turn things around. I'm just so excited. We're 7-2, cuz we really should give Stafford credit. He's done a good job. That throw, though, to Calvin after the turnover was a little bit shaky. Calvin was open, and he underthrew it. Yes,
that was an outstanding catch, though, by Grimes, though.
Great vertical by Grimes, all credit. But that was just a poorly underthrown ball by Stafford. And you got to note that. You get a turnover, you get the ball back, and the first throw is a turnover. Yes, I agree. You should be aggressive, go for it, but you got to make the throw. Calvin Johnson's a beast. You can't underthrow Calvin Johnson. And
he's got to get better at spreading the ball around too.
He's got to get better.
That's I think is the key to his next step in his development is sitting there not basically targeting Calvin Johnson. You got to depend on other people.
Not target him as much.
Right.
Look to others early. Use Calvin as the deep threat as he is, and look at Golden Tate. Dude's not scared of going across the middle. Mm-hmm. Dude has no fear. He can get yards after the catch, and he's a guy that will help you build rhythm on the offense. He's just a great player, and if the Lions can get anything out of the tight ends, I'm really surprised that in a league where a lot of quarterbacks rely on their tight ends because of the injuries and because
we have no tight ends.
We have no tight ends.
What do we have? 3, 4 on the roster, and we have 0 that play every week.
I thought Kellen Davis would make a difference. No, he's just not really doing much. You're not getting nothing out of Ebron and Pettigrew.
What a bad pick that was.
What are you going to do? It's unfortunately one of those guys that we have to wait and see on. Maybe he'll show up in the playoff game. Not likely, but he's not a guy we're going to expect to get anything out of this season, I don't think, realistically. But we're 7-2. It's a nice talking point to talk about what can the Lions do to improve the team. When you're 7-2 and you just win, it's all good. And I do got a good feeling. Drew Stanton may be a little bit distracted going through the birth now. His wife gave birth to their first child. Maybe he may play great depending on, a lot of times when athletes have babies, they're really focused, dialed in, wanting to put on a good performance. But he was a backup for a reason. If the Lions can get out to an early lead versus Arizona, then I don't think Drew Stanton can bring him back. I think the defense, they need to weather the storm. This is going to be one of those games where if we win the first quarter, I think we can dominate. But if you let Arizona with Brown and Fitzgerald get out to an early lead, just like how poorly they played versus Carolina, then it's going to be a tough game. But I thoroughly think they're going to want to go to Arizona and showcase their abilities. 8-1, Arizona is the top seed in the NFC. Lions go out, handle their business. They take over the mantle. And I think that's what they're going to be motivated to do.
I'm going to save my my analysis here on how to beat Arizona for the pick'em.
Because it's exciting time, man. Have you ever been this excited? 1993, the last time they were 7-2. Yeah, we've had some good experiences, but Dominic Raiola was like, I ain't never been 7-2, man. This is crazy. And unfortunately, he's at the tail end of his career. He might not be around for the payoff.
Do you remember what you were doing in 1993?
What I was doing in 1993?
I think I had just got pubic hair.
Yeah, I was 14 years old, and I was on the verge of being a bandwagon guy and being like, shit, I should just be a Cowboys fan.
What the hell is that about?
They win. They play good. They play good. Who the hell cares about loyalty? When you're 14, you don't care about loyalty. You don't care about that.
I used to hate the Cowboys.
Oh my! What? Yeah. How could you hate the Cowboys? They were great.
I used to want the Bills to win every time they met in the playoffs.
Oh no, they built a great team. Like they had Swagger, Troy Aikman, because when he came into the league was so highly touted, and dude went 1-15, and so you kind of rooted for a guy like that because his first season, he took a beating like no other. I'm talking about every other play was getting hurried, sacked, crushed. So I got behind them because they were up-and-coming team, and they had that swagger. I'm hoping the Lions can develop into the Dallas Cowboys. We shall see.
Coming up next, we've got Julian Rosen, our fantasy expert, going to give us a little bit of insight on our Detroit Pistons. So stay tuned.
I'm Megan McCormick out here in Fox Sports LA, and when I'm not sitting out in the sun, I'm listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast.
You got to check out their stuff. I mean, I'm really impressed by it.
You guys have probably one of the better ones I've seen in the country.
Wow.
In a short period of time, you've done good work. Look at me kissing your hand.
I know.
On the line, we have Julian Rosen. He's a little disappointed. He attended the game. He attended the Pistons-Wizards game last night. He got on his Rip Hamilton jersey, was excited, only to see the Pistons lose down the stretch, 107-103. Julian, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It was a little bit of a bummer, no doubt, but a good game. It's good to see the Pistons compete with an upper echelon team in the Eastern Conference. So, yeah, but doing well overall.
Yeah, you could kind of see during the game and at the end what a playoff team looks like versus what the Pistons are doing, kind of struggling to get into that upper echelon, and yet again, they just struggle to close the game out. What was your overall impression of the game, and down the stretch, what was ailing the Pistons?
Yeah, I feel like the Pistons, as you mentioned, they're trying to be a tier 2 team in the East, and the Wizards are a tier 1 team. They're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the conference, and you did see the difference down the stretch. I think the Pistons have issue with defensive rotation. They have shot blockers in Smith and Drummond, but, guys like Gortat were getting open, and then, on the perimeter, a couple guys were hitting shots from the outside. Chris Humphreys from the mid-range as well, giving them issues. The offensive execution needs to get better. I think that the players just need to start buying into Stan Van Gundy's system. And, quite honestly, guys, really, it just comes down to hitting some open shots, and I think that'll help when Cartier Martin and Jody Meeks get back in the lineup.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying, you know what, we can't really fully evaluate Stan Van Gundy's team until he gets all the pieces in place. But just early on, your impressions of the Pistons' play, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of this roster?
I think, this team has improved from last season, even though their record wouldn't indicate. They are competing with teams like the Bulls, Jazz, and the Wizards, which is a good sign. The defense has improved, the depth has improved, which were 2 of our weaknesses, and the biggest weakness last season was three-point shooting. I don't think any of those are particular strengths, but I think they're improvements. I think our strength is honestly our inside game. We have the ability to crash the boards with Jerebko, Monroe, Drummond, so I think our aggressiveness up front is a strength. I think Jennings has started to come into his own. He had a great game tonight, so I think Jennings' offensive ability is a strength, but I think the weakness is just execution down the stretch. This team doesn't quite know how to finish games. They don't quite know how to really run an offense. I think that's going to be something they need to work on if they're going to make the playoffs in the 2014-2015 season.
Now, early on to start the season, again, you start to notice that the combination of Brandon Jennings and Josh Smith, while they have talent, I just think together and the starting 5, I just think they're struggling to mesh together as a team. The team has talent. It just looks like as a collective group, I just don't think they're good enough. And so it's going to be important for Stan Van Gundy to find the right pieces. And we'll get a chance to see when Jody Meeks and Cartier Martin come back what it looks like. But do you think during this season Stan Van Gundy can trade away possibly a Josh Smith or a Greg Monroe in order to improve this team?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that he does trade away Josh Smith. Monroe's disappointing because he, I believe, is our most valuable player far and away. Monroe is the most consistent scorer. He shoots a high percentage, and he's improved defensively. He can rebound, and he's a pretty smart player, unlike Smith, who has had moments of just, really questionable shots and decisions overall. So I would love to see him make a trade for Smith. There was talks in the offseason of trading Smith to Sacramento for an Isaiah Thomas, but Thomas ended up going to Phoenix. So I think Van Gundy can pull the trigger on that. I think that Smith's place on this team is really something that I and many Pistons fans are questioning. He doesn't shoot in a high enough percentage from outside, not close enough. Cartier Martin and Caron Butler can handle the three-point shooting. Defensively, Jerebko is perhaps not a good shot blocker, but a good defender. We have Drummond and Monroe. So I don't know where he fits in on the team, Smith, that is. Jennings, on the other hand, I think, I'm willing to be patient. He has had his moments, but I think he's settled down more this season. And I think him and Augustin could function as a good point guard tandem for the Pistons.
Do you think that Brandon Jennings is going to keep his spot as a starter for the Pistons? I mean, you see when he's there, he's got the spark. He can light up the scoreboard, but he's too inconsistent. When DJ Augustin is in there, it seems like the offense runs a little bit smoother, and it's just very frustrating that Brandon Jennings has been so inconsistent, and he's been pulled. Stan Van Gundy will put him to the bench, and he's complained early on in the season. Your thoughts on Brandon Jennings, and do you think he can improve his game while he's a Piston?
Yeah, I think that's what he's been working on. Van Gundy worked a lot with Nelson, who had similar issues. Jameer Nelson, like earlier in the sort of 2006, 2007 area was sort of known as an erratic player, but Van Gundy settled down his play. I think he's working on doing the same with Jennings. That's why I said I was willing to be much more patient with Jennings. That Jennings' inconsistencies, when he's high, he shows you a lot of really good offensive ability, not only scoring, but tonight he had 10 assists to go with 32 points, which is, really strong. I think him and KCP are starting to mesh. But I agree. I think Augustin is the more consistent, reliable, sort of game-managing point guard. So I wonder if Jennings can up his game and can settle into, be more of a system point guard rather than sort of a street ball, run-and-gun kind of player.
Stan Van Gundy has a great reputation of being a coach that can get his team to improve throughout the season. I think in his tenure, he's never missed the playoffs. Do you think, even though the Pistons have started off a little bit rough this early part of the season, that this collective group can gel together and maybe make a playoff run in the East, which is very soft after the top 5 teams?
Yeah, you're right. They've noted, that Van Gundy has a good pedigree. I mean, he makes the playoffs. With that Orlando team and with Miami, he makes adjustments and his team's always finished strong. So Pistons fans have to, be hoping that that's what happens. I do think the Pistons will make the playoffs. I will stick with my 7th seed prediction, somewhere around 37, 38 wins, which is good enough for a bottom 2 spot in the East. I think, once again, that Josh Smith needs to control his offensive urges. I think Jennings and Augustin, are already starting to work together as a tandem. But I think if these things happen, and Van Gundy, I think, is a good enough coach to make the right adjustments. And I optimistically still see the Pistons with a 6 or 7 seed. But it's going to be a tough season, that's for sure.
Okay, well let's have hope. Yeah, it's a tough start for the Pistons, and it's really tough because they've been in most games, and it just goes to the fact that if the Pistons had that one superstar, that one go-to guy, if they had that on this roster, then I think we could pile up some wins. But right now, they're going to have to play team basketball and team defense, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. But I hope you're right. I hope they can gel together and make a playoff run. So I'm curious, how's the fantasy team that you care about the most doing? Myself, I'm 5-5, and I really bit the bullet last week because of Andy Dalton's horrific game at home, which was really surprising given that they were honoring one of his teammates' sick daughter to have that performance. A -2 bit me, and I lost. But I'm 5-5. I'm enjoying this season. How are you sitting right now?
Yeah, I'm nearby for my main league. Disappointing. Dalton and the Bengals. That's been a very unfortunate situation. Might be a turnaround in Cincinnati, a new regime in terms of offense and quarterback next season. In my main league, I just tied for the first time in 4 years. I tied, and amazingly, we were the 2 top scorers by a long shot. We tied 117 to 117. I needed the Eagles kicker to give me 1 more point. Couldn't quite get there. So I'm 5-4-1 as the second leading scorer. So just have had some unfortunate matchups. I've been riding Demaryius Thomas and Antonio Brown pretty hard. Russell Wilson at quarterback, he's been iffy up and down for me. But, I think my team's good. I have Brown, I have Thomas, Wilson, Andre Ellington, a running back, Denard Robinson, former Wolverine, who I'm thrilled to play at my running back spot. So overall, pretty good. I'm 8-2 in my other league, so doing much better there. But it's been a great fantasy football season so far, and I wish us both the best of luck. 5-5. That's a really on the fence sort of record to have right now.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those players that will tinker too much, will maybe focus a little bit too much on projections, and I'll always have that one bench player that if I would put him in the game, if I would start him, I would win the game. This last week, your tie game, was there a player that you left on the bench that, had you played him, would have got you the win, would have put you over the edge?
No, amazingly, no. That one loss this season, that did happen, but all my players on my bench were on bye week, actually. Every player. I had Reggie Wayne, I had Shane Vereen, I believe I had a Chargers player, and another defense, all on bye week. So, I put it all out there, 117. My opponent should have played D'Angelo Williams, who had 2 points because his flex spot, Ronnie Hillman, got him 1. So he would have played Williams ahead of Hillman, he would have beat me 118 to 117. I kind of joke with him about that, but no bench sort of regret. That's always tough at fantasy, because you want to go with the guys that have the highest odds of performing, but sometimes there's a guy on your bench that every once in a while he has a big game, and the time that you leave him on your bench is when he has that big game. So that's why fantasy can be so frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. Or when you score 131 points and you still lose on late touchdowns in that Monday night game. Or for myself, I'll end up going up against like the Philadelphia defense who drops 31 points. Or, Aaron Rodgers who will have 6 touchdowns. Now, lucky for me this week, I didn't get bit by that one outlier performance. For me, I could have played Matthews for the Eagles, and he's obviously gotten some early chemistry with Mark Sanchez, got a couple touchdowns. But I'm interested to get your opinion on 2 quarterbacks, Mark Sanchez and Drew Stanton. You think they can put up some numbers this week? And going forward, should there be some pickups in fantasy leagues?
Yeah, Stan's the local guy from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. He's starting in place of Palmer towards ACL. Sanchez, of course, in place of Foles. I would lean towards Sanchez on fantasy. I just picked him up in my league that I have Wilson because my backup previously was Palmer. I'm thinking Sanchez could be a guy you depend on for 14 to 17 points. He has Matthews, he has Macklin, he has Ertz, he has McCoy and Sproles. He has a lot of guys to throw to, and there could be an argument saying that when he was with the Jets, he never really had that many weapons. Certainly he made some mistakes, but he certainly has the ability to put up points and to lead an offense. So I would lean Sanchez. Stanton's going to be managing the game, throwing a lot of screens to Ellington, throwing some shorter passes to Carlson and guys like that. So I would count on Sanchez a little more, but I think Stan's a good backup as well.
Okay, Julian Rosen. You can see his work on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. He writes weekly fantasy studs and duds. And also you can find him on Twitter at F_RosenInTime, RosenTime. You can find him on Twitter. He's got great insight regarding fantasy football, and we're lucky to have him be one of our fantasy insiders. Julian, thanks for your time. Keep up the good work, and I'm really sorry again. Pistons lost for you.
Yeah, no, hey, it was a rough night, but hey, at least the Tigers re-signed Victor for 4 years, so a good day for Detroit sports overall. Thanks for having me on the show, and I look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Y'all have a good night.
All right, the Pistons have had a rough start to the season, and we want to thank Julian for coming on, giving us his opinions regarding the Pistons after their game versus the Wizards. And going forward, I just hope they can gel. I just hope that Josh Smith and Brandon Jennings can resemble some sort of tandem, because their shot selection has continued to be terrible, and they just appear to be one of those guys that can be anchors to success. They just are hindering the team, and we hope they can continue to get better under Stan Van Gundy's new system. But right now, it's looking a little tough. All right, cuz it's that time of the week. The doc went perfect last week. I think for one of the first times, I picked all the games correctly. Now, I can't gloat about it. I mean, I did pick against Tampa Bay. I did pick against Jacksonville. And I did pick with the Lions. So I didn't really do nothing special because I just picked the easy games. But in the spirit of competition, you got to do what you got to do. And with that, I've now extended my lead to 28-25. Yes, sir. Let's do this. This is what we call the NFL Pick'em Challenge, and we pick 3 games and the Lions game. And at the end of the year, I have a good feeling that the Jock will be wearing a Michigan State jersey to a lot of functions. You ready to kick this bad boy off?
Let's do it.
All right. With my first pick, I am going to take a team that is rolling, playing great on offense, going on the road, but I think they're going to cover the spread. The Broncos are favored to win by 10 over the Rams, and I think they go in and just crush St. Louis. Manning could have 6 touchdowns. St. Louis is playing rough. I just hope they don't decide to play their best game versus Denver this week. So my first pick, Denver Broncos -10 at St. Louis.
I've got that same game, and I'm taking Peyton Manning in those Broncos. Peyton just put up 5 touchdowns last week. He could put up 7. Screw 6. He could put up 7, could have put up 1,000 yards against the St. Louis Rams defense. Take Denver -10.
I like San Francisco coming off of a great win versus New Orleans. They are going to New York. New York is just struggling on so many fronts, and it's going to be tough for them to really be competitive versus the 49ers. So with my second pick, lock it down, put a lot of money on it. 49ers victorious over the G-Men, as some would call them.
I have no idea how I'm going to ever make up any space on you. I've got San Francisco over the Giants as well. I think San Francisco is a more talented team. They're a more complete team. At certain points, the Giants look great. At other points, they look like you've just set them on fire. So I think San Francisco rolls into New York, and they sit there and they douse kerosene all over these Giants and watch them roll around in flames.
Because I'm liking the momentum of Cleveland. They're playing great. They got an extra couple days to prepare. So you have to really rally around a guy like Brian Hoyer. Has been in the shadow of Manziel all year, and dude's just balling. Played great versus Cincinnati, and I think they bring the noise at home versus Houston. So with my third pick, I got the Cleveland Browns -3 over Houston.
That's a solid pick. I'm going a little bit different, though. I know this team plays a little bit weaker on the road than they do at home, but Marshawn Lynch coming off a 4-touchdown game, I think now they are focusing on the run. These Seattle Seahawks are now sitting there feeding the beast. They're feeding Mr. Skittles himself. On top of it, Russell Wilson has no problem catching an edge and sitting there picking up 20 yards at a clip. I think that the Seattle Seahawks, who are getting 1 point on the road in Kansas City, I think they beat up on the Chiefs this week.
We're at the point, we picked the Lions game for the extra bonus point for 2 points. In this game, I really believe that the Lions are going to look to get that swagger back. They're going to want to play great on the road, and can they come back late again? I really believe Arizona is going to roll out to a 10-point lead by halftime, and I think that the key drive will be the first drive after the half. I think that the Lions are going to make the adjustments, and I think they're going to roll. I think they're going to play a decent game throughout. I don't think they're going to make a lot of mistakes, and I think they're going to try to take it to the Arizona defense. So, in the end, it's going to be a nail-biter again, but I don't think the Lions will be coming back. I think Arizona will be the team that will be trying to rally at the end of the game, and the Lions defense will get a key turnover. And so I think the Lions will win this game 24-23 to go to 8-2.
The Lions go on the road. They go to Arizona. They're going to sit there and they're going to bring the house onto Drew Stanton. Drew Stanton hasn't seen pressure like he's going to see this Sunday ever in his career. I don't care what was going on in that Hurricane Katrina game against Notre Dame a few years ago. I don't care. These Lions are going to sit there and they're going to smoke him. Arizona might be down 2 quarterbacks after this week. The Lions are going to go on the road. They're going to claim supremacy of the NFC, and they're going to sit there and roll out to a victory. It'll be a little bit close, but I think that they beat up on Drew Stanton, and I think that's where this game is won. It's won in the trenches, and Stanton gets popped in the face.
Cause another great podcast. Want to thank Julian Rosen. He's got a great insight, great sports fan, and he gave us a lot of information regarding the Pistons. Support those that support us. Visit our friends at the Detroit Sports Nation, DetroitSportsNation.com for great Detroit sports content. We want to thank those that support us and give us contributions on a monthly basis. We couldn't do this show without you. We greatly appreciate it. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. This has been another episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast. Thanks for downloading.
Go Lions. I'm a man of the people.
I got it. Yeah. You're doing well.
You gave no effort. You looked horrible.
Brady Hoke touches those kids on a daily basis. Go Blue.